Hello and welcome to the Men of Action podcast, where we bring on stellar men who felt like a zero until they recognized that hero within themselves to pull them out of the pits of despair so that way they can overcome the difficulties in life head on, facing the problems, facing the storms head on. And today I got Matt Izzo, who is Mr. Ironman, and we're going to get to a chance to hear his story and how well and how awesome this man is. I've been following him on Twitter for probably like 6-7 months at this point. I'm always encouraged by his weight loss journey as I'm on my own weight loss journey and how to get in best shape. So let's get in tune so that way let's see if we can learn a thing or two from Matt. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Zach. I'm so happy to get a chance to speak with you and your audience. Like we were kind of touching on a little bit, but before we started recording, I'm just kind of a regular guy, and I'm an unlikely fitness influencer, if you want to call me that. It's not something that I ever would have imagined for myself. Because I was somebody, I struggled with obesity for a long time, and then all kind of the sort of issues that went along with that. I had asthma. I wasn't really athletic. I gave up sports after Little League pretty much. And, I was working at a dead end job that I hated and, draining my energy. And I had some drinking problems along with that, just real common kind of stuff, that it's easy to fall into like a rut like that. And, that was kind of my whole life until my mid 30s when I finally, took control of my life and I made a decision to turn things around. I lost 75 pounds for the third time, the same 75 pounds. I lost it for the third time when I was 34 years old. And now I've kept it off for coming on 6 years now. And I've continued.
Oh, hey, that's the moment to celebrate that.
It's awesome. And it really is in many ways my greatest achievement. It's easy to look back on something and say, hey, it's not that big of a deal or whatever. But, living for such a long time on the one side of that problem, I didn't know that I could ever solve it, and for years it seemed like an impossible thing for me to do. So, finally doing that and then, getting fitter and stronger and being able to, tackle some endurance sports. And, I've run a couple of marathons now. I did an Ironman. I've done a ton of other races too on top of that. I've had a lot of fun doing it, learned a lot about myself, challenged myself in new ways, and it's just been a great experience. Now I share what I'm doing on social media. I have a Twitter community I've built, and I try to lead by example every day and show people the process that goes into these things, right? Because it's easy to look at somebody holding up an Ironman finisher medal and you're like, oh, wow, okay, that's great, but I try to kind of shine the light onto how this goes, what it's like day in, day out, the sort of commitment and determination that are required, the good days and the bad days. Because this is really the power of social media is you can get insight into this process and not just see the end result. So I try to lead by example now and document what I'm doing on social media and, serve as an inspiration for others, because I know there's a lot of other people, who have some of these same issues that I've overcome. And I believe really strongly that I didn't just do this for myself, right? That, this is part of some overall larger benefit that I can provide. And I'm here I overcame what I did to ultimately help people and to, teach them how to do some of the same things that I've done.
Yeah, and that's incredible because I'm sure it's very common of, people lose a bunch of weight, then they gain it back and then lose weight, then gain it back. I know you see that a lot with people who have get that liposuction done. It's kind of that's more of a quick compared to probably what you've done, actually working out and drinking healthy and doing a lot of lifestyle changes. But could you tell us a little bit of that kind of emotional roller coaster of losing weight, getting it back? And I mean, like you said, you lost 75 pounds, 75 pounds for the third time. I mean, I can't imagine what that must have felt like going through all those different emotions.
Yeah, the way you phrase it is intelligent, and it's more than just following a program, right? It's more than just, hey, you got to eat these foods and do this exercise and you can lose weight. Like, of course that works, and I think everybody who struggled with their weight for a long time has had some degree of success at some point with weight loss, because it's not that complicated really.
Right.
It's not necessarily easy, but it's simple enough, and it revolves around eating less, right? And I think as much as the topic might be debated, I think pretty much everyone agrees you have to change the amount and types of foods that you're eating, right? So, you can have some success with it, but having lasting success is a very different sort of thing because, like you said, it's an emotional roller coaster,
Right.
and it's more than just using willpower to follow some program. That's great and all, and that can get you temporary success, but willpower only lasts for so long. And then what do you do when that willpower gives in, right? Then
Yeah.
you're going to be more guided by emotions and your self-image, your identity, the way you see yourself on a deep level. And if you haven't done the work to evolve that and to fix, not just your physical health, but your mental health and your emotional health and your spiritual health, right? We're holistic people. So in order to have a lasting, sustainable change, it comes with making changes in all of these different areas. And, the hypothetical example that you cite of the person who has liposuction but ends up gaining the weight back again, well, it's because that, they have not actually learned the behavior patterns. They have not evolved their image in such a way, their self-image. They don't know how to live sort of as this higher version of themselves that they want to live at. So when they're left with no choice but to live, if you're following a program that is not sustainable, it requires a lot of willpower. Well, if you can't keep doing that anymore, and you don't know a happy medium, right? You don't know how to kind of off ramp that to something that is going to be more sustainable, but also aligned with maintaining your progress. Well, then you're probably just going to end up reverting back to your old habits, and it might not be the first day or the first week, but after a few weeks or months, you're just going to end up doing the same things you've always done. And the cycle of positivity you've tried to build can easily turn into kind of a negative cycle again, and you just end up back where you started. And that's so common for so many people. It was common for me for a long time, and I'm grateful to have overcome that. And now I try to help and teach other people that by taking sort of a multifaceted approach to it. Ultimately, yes, behavior needs to change, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we get these results. But our behavior is informed by our emotions, right? And our emotions are informed by our beliefs. And then our beliefs ultimately are dictated by our self-image. And there's ways to make progress at all of these different levels to make a more holistic transformation and have it be something that is more sustainable and long-lasting. It's something that you can last and break free from that cycle of yo-yo dieting, weight loss and weight gain, and all the demoralizing things that go along with it.
Yeah, and that's why I love that you touched upon that. It goes beyond willpower. Like you really do have to tackle it from a holistic approach, and that's addressing the physical health, the mental health, the emotional health, and then the spiritual health. Because by taking care of all those aspects, it's a lot of work, and you have to develop that consistency, that discipline, the motivation to go out and do that, and recognizing, gotta look in the mirror sometimes and be like, man, what do I need to change about in my life? I mean, to a degree, I mean, we're all flawed, right? I mean, we're all going to make mistakes and learn from it. And so I love that you just touch upon that. So what helped you finally keep all the weight off? Like, what was your factor that really helped you go beyond that willpower?
Yeah, so at first it really was kind of willpower, and I made the decision, and I said, look, I know how to lose weight. I've done it before multiple times. I learned how to do it in a really successful way. It's demanding and challenging, but it's easier now, right? Smartphones make logging and tracking food choices kind of easy. There's lots of information available about the nutritional breakdown of foods and stuff. So pretty much what I said was, I don't care, if I have to follow some sort of diet or program for the rest of my life, right? Obviously, the weight loss phase is going to be intense and it's going to require willpower and sacrifice, right? But maintaining weight, well, if you just kind of apply those same principles, but make the kind of logical adjustments that now you don't have to eat in a caloric deficit anymore, now you can eat sort of, more food and just keep exercising. You don't have to be as strict, but the answer also isn't just to let it go completely and put up your feet on the desk and be like, all right, mission accomplished.
Right.
It's, so that was kind of what I made the commitment, because again, I knew how to do this, and it wasn't so much that I didn't know how to do it. It was that, like, it didn't seem worth it until I was willing to commit to making the change for the rest of my life, because I knew it would, be about 9 months of effort to lose the weight, but it's not worth it if you're just going to end up getting fat again 6 months later, right? It's just
Right.
as well, hey, pour me another beer. I'm just going to sit here. It's just kind of makes sense. But so it started with willpower, and I didn't know most of the things that I'm going to talk about.
Sure.
In terms of these higher level sort of things, these are things that I had to kind of figure out along the way. And what I realized is that it really has more to do with your self-image and the way you see yourself on an unconscious level. One of the things people will talk about, with weight loss, is this idea that we have a weight set point, right? And that there's a genetic sort of predisposition to us being a certain weight, and it's not. Some people would say it's not possible to deviate from that, certainly not for the long term. And if you think about that on some level, it's absurd, right? Because obviously there's countless examples of people who have lost weight and kept it off for a long time. Well, but if you think about it from another perspective, it actually makes a lot of sense, and it's more self-image within your emotional state, and it's a set point, the way you see yourself. And this is very common, for example, right? Like, for me, once I got to a certain point, I was fatter than I felt comfortable being. And then, subconsciously, I would just make adjustments to my life, because I could not, I was not willing to sort of reduce my self-image to kind of meet this new sort of reality, and if I was 250 pounds, I was getting kind of heavy. So I'd say, all right, well, let me start making some changes here, right? But it wasn't done in a focused, sustainable way. So what I managed to do, right, by in a healthier self-image is almost earned, because talk is cheap at the end of the day, right? And,
Right.
you can repeat all the positive affirmations you want, and it can be great for getting your mind right. But at the end of the day, you have to follow through with action that is aligned with, these sort of positive thoughts and positive affirmations. Because if you don't do that, if you don't back it up with your actions, then you're going to, see yourself as a liar, because, and then you're not going to trust, you're not going to trust yourself. Right. And this is going to lead to a negative, a sort of spiral downwards. So I evolved my self-image by just sort of upholding this lifestyle day in, day out for years, right? And then I started to take on these other challenges, all the races that I've done and all that's gone into that, so when you come to see yourself as an Ironman athlete, right? Well, now now I don't see myself as just a fat guy who works in a cubicle. Now I see myself as an Ironman athlete.
Right.
So I'm able to maintain it, I'll say, effortlessly, in air quotes. Obviously, there's a lot of effort that goes into it, but it's not a thing that I'm doing with willpower. It's not forced, right? And I'm committed to a goal and aligning all aspects of my life toward reaching that goal, right? Something like an Ironman race is a very demanding thing to train for. So it requires me to kind of be firing on all cylinders, with weight, nutrition, strength training, sleep, all these things, right? They all have to be sort of aligned well. And this is what's allowed me to really evolve my self-image, but it doesn't need to be that extreme, obviously, right? I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to lose weight and then, take it to this sort of level. It's just something that, interested me. This was not some grand plan that I had at all to do this. It was more like, well, now I've lost weight and I've gotten into good shape. So now this opportunity is open to me. Whereas in the past, I would have thought it was impossible. So, I've kind of gone with it that way. And, this is, what is required, though, for long-term sustainable success. And you need to sort of act in accordance with the way that you want to see yourself, how this higher version, this healthier version of you would act. You need to act in accordance with that. And by acting in accordance with that, you then become that person.
Yeah, it's a lot of the way you're talking about that reverse engineering, like starting with the end in mind of who do you want to become.
Yes.
Then how can you begin to take those steps and those courageous first steps of changing your life for the better,
Yeah.
because obviously changing your life is one of the hardest things that we ever have to do in life.
Yeah. And this is something that I talk to my clients about. And it's
Mhm.
like, hey, envision the higher version of yourself, right? What is that person like? What are they thinking? What words do they use? What actions do they engage in? What foods do they eat? Where do they go? Who do they surround themselves with, right? How do they see the world? And you become that higher version of yourself by becoming that higher by embodying them, right? And
Right.
the more you're able to embody that, the more you're able to become that person, then the more you become that person, right? Like this is how you do that. This version of you is you. It's not an inauthentic thing. People might say that changing is inauthentic. I'm a more authentic version of myself now than I've ever been, because a lot of this has been about shedding the masks that I've taken to
Right.
wear throughout my life. So it's really becoming a more authentic version of yourself, a higher version of yourself, and then by embodying that, by living as that person lives, you then become that person, and then once you get to that point, well, then you can just repeat the process over and over
Right.
again. It never ends, and that's one of the things I've learned on my journey is that there is no finish line. Once you get to that finish line, you have to set a new goal, because if you don't, you're only moving forward, you're moving backwards. So
Right.
you have to keep moving forward.
No, goals are excellent because they help us keep our purpose alive, keep that fire lit inside of us. So, like, how do you keep that fire? Because you've done an Ironman, you've done a lot of different marathons,
Yeah.
half Ironman, and everything else. So, like for you, what is the next step to just in your fitness journey and maintaining the weight being off, or and hopefully not never again gaining a lot of
Yeah.
weight again?
It's a good question. I'm not actually sure right now,
Okay.
and I'm in kind of a period of limbo right now,
Mm.
where I don't necessarily know what the next step is. A lot of it is going to be kind of geared toward more of my business goals, and
Okay.
really kind of spreading my message and helping other people. The problem with training for something like an Ironman is, it crosses a line of, and it stops being like exercise gives you energy, and now it starts to be like, well, exercise takes away energy from other aspects of your life, right? So I have to put parts of my business on the back burner, just because it's so time consuming and
Oh, sure.
demanding in so many ways. So I don't know if the next step is to do something longer or harder, right? I have an appreciation for how these things scale, and I understand that, hey, I could do this, right? And it's more a question of, do I want to do this? Something
Right.
crazy like, let's say, run 100 miles, right? I know that I could do it, and knowing you could do it isn't the same as doing it,
Right.
obviously, but it's a far cry from looking at it and being like, oh man, there's no way I could ever do anything like that. Like, I know I could do it if I were to put in the work and stay healthy and all those other things, right? Like, it's something that's achievable for me. Now it's a question of, well, is it worth all my time and energy that it would take to achieve that goal? Or would I be better off doing something kind of more modest? But so in the long, in the long term, I have signed up for the New York City Marathon lottery, which would be in November, just because it's kind of an impossible dream from my childhood that I could one day run that race. The odds of getting accepted are kind of low, so I'm not planning on it. I figure if it's meant to be, it'll be, and if not,
Sure.
I'll have to find something else. I'm enjoying right now training with a more balanced approach. I got into the gym today, and I did some more intense upper body weight exercises for the first time in a few years, really, just
Mm.
because I've been dealing with some injuries, and then obviously all the Ironman training. It's hard to balance, strength training with that. It becomes more kind of supportive. So
Right.
it feels good to do that and just kind of get into a more balanced place with exercise and training, at least for a few months, until some new challenge presents itself.
Well, and you kind of touched upon that earlier too in the podcast, where you're talking about, you might want to begin your weight loss journey losing a few pounds, and that's all you really want to lose is a few pounds. That's your journey, and trying to figure out what you want to do next. So just because your journey you've done an Ironman, so if you want to do another one, awesome. Or if you want to kind of focus on other areas of your life, that's still developing a goal, that's still having some fire lit inside you to keep going, to give you a reason to stay in shape. So if you want to kind of teach other people how to lose weight. I know you have a coaching program, and
Yeah.
that's going to be in the description below. So, of course, I'm sure you can DM Matt if you're interested in that.
Yeah.
But it's more so of you got to look the part.
Yeah.
If you're like 50 pounds overweight, you tell me to, let's say, for lack of better words, eat a salad.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at you and be like, no, you should eat a salad.
Yeah, and I've gone through that because I remember my coworkers would talk about fat loss and stuff,
Yeah.
and I knew how to do it at that point. I'd done it before twice, and I didn't offer them any advice though because I knew that it wouldn't be seen as credible because I was fat myself and struggling with it, but it was more just I wasn't in a place where I was ready to commit myself to it. The knowledge wasn't what wasn't good, but this is one of the great things about sharing on social media is it holds me accountable too. And
Right.
if I've got to talk about this stuff and I've got to put myself on camera and I got to appear on podcasts, right, and stuff like that, like, well, I have to make sure I'm also walking the walk with it. And,
Right.
sharing vulnerabilities that I have too, and maybe not vulnerabilities, but struggles, right? Because it doesn't come easy for anyone, and I mean, at a point I'm at now, I'd actually like to drop about 5 pounds or so. It's a challenge managing body composition while you're training for these kind of demanding events. From like a nutritional perspective, you're really worried about really just taking in enough food, and making sure your body has the nutrition it needs to recover from training, and stuff like that. So, I raced a little heavier last year than I was accustomed to. It was an intentional sort of choice. Now I'd like to drop back down a little bit. So, it's an ongoing struggle, kind of for everybody, I think at this point.
Yeah, well, especially, what you want to go for. Do you want to go for like a stronger look, a more lean
Yeah.
look? I mean, there's so many different looks now,
Yeah.
and there's
It's
so many different informations and
yeah.
knowledge out there that you can pretty much almost attain
Yeah,
any type of.
exactly. It's one of those things too that when you're fat, you think that, well, being fat is my biggest problem. So in order to solve my problem, I need to be the opposite of fat,
Right.
right? I need to be as lean as possible. I need to have an 8-pack, right? And it's kind of like,
Right.
well, going from 30% body fat to 15% body fat is going to change your life, but going from 15% to 10%, probably not. It's not going to kind of have that same. It's definitely diminishing returns on it. And sort of making a more holistic transformation, I've gotten more comfortable with that and with my kind of body in general, and not identifying with it so much, and realizing that, if you have a healthy body, if it can do the things you want it to do, if you don't get tired, if it doesn't feel bad, right? If you look good, then who really cares kind of
Right.
what numbers on the scale? But it took me kind of a long time to get around to that perspective, because for a long time it was the number on the scale that consumed me, and I learned to sort of use that to my advantage too. So.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with using it in the beginning stages. That way you can really see that you're losing a lot of weight. But,
Yeah.
once you kind of, because, I mean, we're not going to be just thin air and nothingness. You want to have like an idea of a number just as a starting point. And then as you gain knowledge to apply to wisdom, then that's when you can kind of begin, okay, do I want to be at, like, let's say if you're a bodybuilder, you might want to go from that 15% to 10% that shows the muscles just a little bit more finer. So it's, again, going with your look and what you're going after, and just talking to different people. Like, I've talked to a lot of different people about health, wellness, and exercise, because everyone has a little bit of a different spin on it. How much carbs do you put in? And if you're having carbs, like, is that because you're going to be running more and you need to have that extra fuel?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I've gotten healthier too. Is now I care more about competing in these races than I do about how I look, right? So a lot of people, myself included, sort of get into this for superficial reasons, which is fine. And obviously, it's important to look good. That's a sign of an emotionally healthy person. You want to look good, but along the way, I think you should learn some things about it, right? And that's simply losing weight won't solve your problems. And this was, one of the reasons why I would gain weight in the past, because, on some level I would do it. And then, it didn't fulfill the sort of promise that I gave it, right? I built
Right.
up the expectations. Oh, girls are throwing themselves at me now, right? I
Right.
finally solved my problem. It's like, well, I actually didn't solve my problem. I solved one of my problems, right? But the deeper
Right.
problem still kind of remained, and fat loss didn't fix that. So it's okay to get involved in it for superficial reasons, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And you can just kind of live a healthy lifestyle, and your body's going to do what it does, and you could be okay with that, provided you're in good health, and it works for you.
Well, that's why you gotta be honest with yourself. You call it taking off that mask,
Yeah,
stop lying to yourself. That's why it's so important for us to take time to be honest with ourselves. Like, okay, what would ask ourselves this question, what would losing weight do for you?
yeah,
Well, honestly, what would it do besides feeling great about being, let's say 50 pounds lighter? What emotionally, physically, spiritually would that do for you?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's where people really
yeah,
have to think, because
yeah,
that's where how your why gets developed.
yeah.
Because then your why is going to the how to the two to keep the weight off.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's going to look different for everybody, really, and it's something that, I don't know that I could have evolved in the other ways that I did if I didn't lose the weight and I didn't get physically
Mhm.
healthier, because our physical health is tied with our emotional health and our mental health, right?
There it is.
It all works in concert together, and the inside reflects the outside, and the outside reflects the inside, right? So,
Yes.
if you're emotionally healthy, then you should have a healthy body, and if you have a healthy body, then you should be emotionally healthy. And I think a lot of times the reason that doesn't kind of stick is because there is an incongruence in that, and it's always trying to find its level, basically, right? So when you end up gaining the weight back again, it might not just be because of, on some level, sure, it's going to be because of the sugar and the seed oils and all that other stuff. Like, yeah, on one level that is the cause, but what is why did you engage in those behaviors now when before you didn't, and you saw success with it, right? These are kind of the deeper questions, and this is kind of the fundamentals of my coaching, and I feel like I'm sort of uniquely qualified to talk to people about this, because I've undergone this kind of struggle myself, and I don't think somebody, unless they've actually been obese and struggled with it for a long time, can really understand just how challenging that is, because you'll see weight loss advice from people who haven't really had this issue, and you can just kind of tell sometimes, and
Mhm.
it's not their fault, because it's just, it's a deeper thing than just, oh, eat less, move more. Like, on some level, sure, that's great advice, but then how do you sustainably integrate that into your life for the long term, right? That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where the
Exactly.
challenge is, and that's where people have a hard time with it.
Well, especially when you get involved into like emotional eating, so you eat for comfort, not for like sustainability or just energy
Hmm.
level. But where there's that emotional connection to food. I know some people just love food. They
Yeah,
love the taste, they love the texture. And then for some people, it's more of an anxiety. And so to
yeah.
comfort them, they self-soothe by eating.
Hmm. Yeah, and then there's also just a lot of it is just kind of unconscious behavior, and
Yeah.
so
Oh my gosh, how much
why do
stuff
you
consciously is ridiculous.
why do you eat the things you eat? I don't know, just because it's what I ate,
There.
and it's what I started eating. I ate it as a kid, or I
Yeah.
started eating it when I was 25 because my girlfriend bought it. Like, who knows why, unless you're kind of intentional with it, and you give it some thought, right? There's this idea of intuitive eating, and it definitely is a thing. Some people can eat intuitively, but if you're overweight or obese, then I would suggest you can't eat intuitively at the state that you're in, and you're disconnected from your body, and you're disconnected from how these foods
Mm,
actually make you feel. Because if you were connected with that, you wouldn't be eating them. So
correct.
I think an important thing then is to say, okay, don't eat intuitively, right? Don't eat emotionally, and use
Right.
your analytical brain, use your logical reasoning, educate yourself and figure out analytically what to eat instead, and just sort of override how you feel and use your brain and knowledge to figure out what to eat and log it and track it, right? And then
Right.
also see how that works for you, right? It's a trial, and see how you respond to that, make changes, see how you respond to those changes. This is going to look a little bit different for everybody. Obviously, there's people who have had great success with all these different kinds of nutritional approaches, and they will argue, till the cows come home about which way is better. But I think you can zoom out and say, okay, look, obviously there's more than one way to solve this problem. Certain things work for certain people, and that's great. I think we can learn from everybody, right? And and I think for most people it makes sense. Hey, let's start with a balanced approach, and then let's make changes as we go. And if you end up being hardcore keto after that, and it works for you, and you like it, then great, right? But I wouldn't suggest that as a starting point for anybody. I would say, all right, let's just start with a balanced approach, see how it goes, because you have to kind of figure this out as you go. Fat loss is both an art and a science.
Yes.
And it's something, though, if you stick with it and you believe in yourself, the self-belief aspect of it is the most important part. Because if you just keep believing in yourself, keep trying stuff, don't get discouraged when things don't work, then your success is inevitable. So that's really kind of what I would urge people, is not to give up. And look, if you've made it this far in this podcast, you haven't given up. A part of you hasn't given up.
I know we're about 31 minutes in, so if you're still watching this, I mean, let's go. Let's put some fire in the chest, because you can reclaim your life and you can take control. It's not going to be easy. And if you talk to anyone who's trying to lose weight, if you talk to anyone who's even trying to improve their life, it takes a lot of effort. And it goes beyond willpower, as we've been mentioning in here. It goes beyond, just that motivation, but it encompasses all of them. You got to have the will. You got to have the motivation, the discipline. You got to have the logic, and then you got to have the emotional why. And then something that a lot of people don't do, that I kind of teach upon, is you got to be grateful for yourself of doing this journey. Before you go to bed, I always say to people, list at least one or two things that you're grateful for about yourself. That way you keep that emotion, you keep the logic, you keep it balanced, because you're telling yourself the facts of how you improved, and then you can have that emotional feeling of how great it's going to feel. You can get a good night's sleep, which, let's be honest, a lot of people don't, because they don't recognize. A lot of people don't recognize the importance of sleep, how much it affects the mood, the weight loss, your metabolism. Just again, what we've been talking about, your view of yourself.
Yeah, it's important, and gratitude is an important practice. Courtney and I, every night before bed, we have a journal where we write down 3 great things from the day before, right? Just to show some gratitude. It's easy to sort of focus on the things you don't have and the areas you're lacking, and not appreciate all the amazing things that we all pretty much take for granted. Certainly, if you're listening or watching this, you have internet access, and you have, food and water and shelter and heat and air conditioning and indoor plumbing and all these kind of great things that are easy to take for granted. But there's a lot more energy in gratitude, in a state of gratitude, than there is in a state of lack. And just, like you said, it's not going to necessarily be easy. But what I told myself was, I knew it would take about 9 months for me to lose the weight. And look, those 9 months are going to pass either way, right? Here it is. It's September of 2016. It's going to be June 1st, 2017. And where do I want to be when that happens? I could either have reached my goal, or at least made a lot of progress towards my goal, or I could be in the same situation or worse, and then still staring at the same problem and having made no progress towards it. So, and then, looking back on that almost 6 years later now, or over 6 years later from when I started, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Because it's one of these sort of asymmetrical bets, right? Because you put in 9 months of work here in 2016, 2017, but here it is still paying dividends 6 years later, right? So that effort, that sacrifice, provided you keep up with it, and keeping up with it isn't as hard as doing it in the first place, but it's harder than doing nothing, right? It's somewhere in between there. But that work you put in can pay off for years and years down down the line, provided you kind of keep the momentum and keep the energy going in that direction, and don't look at this as a temporary thing, right? It's a cliche, but cliches are often true, right?
I love cliches. I think everyone on this channel
It's
loves
not
cliches.
it's not a diet. Yeah, it's not a diet; it's a lifestyle change.
There
Right?
we go.
And you know, it's true because it is, you know, and a lifestyle change involves a diet change too, right? So it's more than just changing what you eat. It's
Right.
changing the way you see yourself on a deep level. But you know, that's not something to fear. You're gonna have to leave stuff behind for sure. People probably too, you know, and there's going to be change associated with this. And you know, that part of it can be challenging. You're going to have to break, you know, your behavior patterns and stop going some of the, right. I stopped going to the local bar that I was a regular at, you know, and that was a difficult thing. That was one of the hardest parts, because now it's not just changing what I'm eating and all this other stuff. Now I'm not getting the same social activity that I would, right. And I have this time, and so instead of, you know, doing this thing that was a sort of unconscious behavior pattern. Hey, it's Friday night, let's go to the bar, right? Well, now it's like, okay, I'm just going to sit here, you know, and it's like, you know, it's that part of it in some ways is harder than anything else, you know, and this is the stuff that doesn't necessarily get, you know, a lot of the headlines on social media. But you know, it's worth it, because this is what you have to go through, right? Evolution is going to be a hard thing for any of us, you know, and the caterpillar turns into the butterfly, right? There's obviously going to be a painful process for that happening. You have to be willing to let the caterpillar go in order to become the butterfly. You know, that's the only, you can't have it both ways. So, you know, and that takes courage, and that can be a really challenging thing, is letting go of the past and embracing a new uncertain future where you don't necessarily feel comfortable in it. And you know, that can be difficult for sure, but it's worth it, and it's worth figuring out.
I think you just said 2 key points: living in the past and comfort.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a famous kind of quote by Lao Tzu where it says, if we live in the past, we're depressed. If we live in the future, we're anxious. The best way to live is in the present, where it's a gift.
Yeah. And that's that flow state, right? You know,
Yes.
and that's one of the reasons that I've come to love endurance sports. And you know, you can at sometimes at least access that flow state. Sometimes when you're running, you're able to like turn your mind off and just kind of be. Swimming in the ocean, for example, is a great place for a flow state, because you don't have much time to worry about your day-to-day problems when there's actual waves and stuff that you have to, like, you know, concern yourself with. The past and the future obviously are important, but I think what you want to do is be intentional about accessing them, right? And you know, look at the past, learn from the past, right?
Correct.
You know, and figure out what you could have done better. Give yourself credit for what you did well too, because I think that's a common thing with a lot of people that I see, you know, and I work with, is they have a negative self-image, and these negatives stand out a lot more than the positives do, right? So the same way you would encourage an employee of yours or a child or anybody else that you cared for and you love deeply, you need to treat yourself that same way, you know, and that's how you treat yourself with unconditional love. And that's, you know, giving yourself credit for the things that you do well, and learning from your shortcomings, holding yourself accountable for them, but not beating yourself up over them, right? And then once you learn these lessons, then just leave the past in the past.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the future. It makes sense to, you know, consider the future and to prepare for certain things that might happen in the future, for sure. But then worrying about it and becoming consumed by it, that doesn't serve you either, right? So, you know, if you consider something in the future and you analyze it and you say, well, sure, but the odds of that happening are super low, then just forget about it, right? Like this is why I'm not living in an old missile silo out in South Dakota or something like that. Like, yeah, sure, I suppose it's possible that if things go crazy, right? And but if I'm not prepared to do that, then there's no sake in worrying about that, because it's just going to be wasted energy, wasted anxiety, and it's probably going to be anxiety that I feel about other things in my life that I'm just kind of projecting onto this futuristic kind of scenario. So, just be intentional with accessing the past and the future. And like you said, try to stay present in the moment as much as you can, because life is always happening right here, right now, right? What time is it? It's always the same time. It's always right now.
I love it. There's always a time. It's right now.
Exactly.
Love it, man. That's such a good, like, natural flow too, just to say it's like, because you're never going to be ready. You just got to start.
For sure.
Everyone starts as a novice at one point. Everyone starts out with like not knowing any skills, and it takes time and dedication to continue to learning yourself, learning your triggers, learning what causes you to feel upset, learning what causes you to give up, and then trying to figure out what you can do. And I always focus on what's one thing you can do today for a better tomorrow and a better now, more so as well. Because you can think, once you transition your mind from I can't do this to what can I do, the brain automatically goes to, okay, let's solve this problem. You got a problem now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. 2 + 2, let's see, 4. So once we kind of figure out that problem, we can solve it.
Yeah, our brains are pattern recognition machines, right? This is what they do. So if not to be too crass, but if you've been a loser, right, and all you've known is losing throughout your life, in your life experience, then your brain is going to expect more losing from the things that you do. So one of the ways to break that cycle is by becoming a winner, and you can do that by stacking up some easy small wins and building momentum toward working on something bigger, right? One of the biggest things for me was I walked 10,000 or more steps every day for 7.5 years.
Right.
And it's a minor thing walking 10,000 steps one day. Like, in the grand scheme of things, what does it matter? But you do it every day, and you get the notification about it, and you start to feel good about yourself because you set a goal and you reached the goal, and you did it every day. You did it every day this year, right? And you start to see yourself differently, because now it's like, okay, now I'm goal oriented and I am successful. I set these goals and I achieve them on the regular. This is just kind of what I do. This is how you evolve your self-image. And again, it's not through talk, it's through action, right? It's good to have positive affirmations and speak highly of yourself. That's good. But if your actions don't match that, then it's going to be inauthentic. So just getting those small wins, breaking these kind of lifelong kind of behavior patterns of losing and expecting bad and these sort of negative sort of behavior patterns, breaking those can be difficult, and that's I think a lot of people's biggest issue is, you expect almost the worst, and then it ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then you expect it, and then that's what you end up attracting, as the outcome is the worst. So but again, our brains are pattern recognition machines. They can only understand the present and the future through the lens of the past.
Right.
So if in the past it's always gone a certain way, your brain is going to expect that it will go the same way. But that's a limiting belief in a lot of times, because it doesn't have to go that way. If you just sort of put that aside, right? Be intentional about the past and say, okay, well, in the past when I did this, I can improve in this area or this area, right? So now I'm going to do it differently. Now I'm going to, try it like this and like this instead. And then just put that doubt, cast that doubt aside and leave it in the past, and just, do it, step into courage. And then, courage is the way that we access higher energy states. So you got to step into that courage, and you have to do something that you've never done before, or you've never done successfully before. And this is the only way to be successful, because, we've all done this many, many times throughout our lives. But again, the negatives stand out more than the positives, But I mean, learned how to drive or how to tie your shoes or any number of things that at one point you did not know how to do.
Correct.
But now you've learned it and it's become routine, and you can apply that to other skills in all areas of your life if you have the right mindset and the right perspective on it.
Yeah, and not be afraid to ask for help too, because that's one
Mm-hmm.
thing. That's the first thing any kid does. Can you tie my shoes?
Yeah, for sure. And
So
you know,
it's
this was one of the things that was challenging for me with my obesity issue. Was it was hard to find help in the late 90s. The internet didn't exist in the way that it does now. And
sure.
now you have all these people who can help you and all this information, right? Some people might say it's too much information, but it's better than nothing.
Hey,
Trust
and
me.
then that's just when you
Yeah.
clean through all the stuff and you find out what fits you, whether it's keto, vegetarian,
Yeah. And
pescatarian, like anything, right?
gives you a starting place, right? So
Exactly.
so and it's just about trying different things, and this is really one of the keys to sort of how I'm successful is I follow a lot of people on social media who are really smart, and when I see them doing something, I'm like, okay, well, there's probably something to this, right? If multiple smart people that I follow are talking about the same thing or doing the same thing or eating the same thing, so what, all right, there's probably something to that, and this is the power of social media. This is how we all kind of learn from each other. This is how we grow as a community. It is by seeing what we're all doing and learning from each other, and kind of all getting better. People say social media is negative. It's only negative if you make it negative, right? It's an
Right.
amplifier. So if you want to make it a positive force in your life, then you can make it a positive force in your life, and it can improve your life if you do that.
Yeah, and all you have to do is just clean out the filter. If you find following a bunch of people who are negative and complain about stuff, be brave and hit the unfollow button.
Yep,
I
that's
mean, that's
it.
all. And then obviously go follow Matt because hey, he produces nothing but positive. And what I really appreciate with Matt though is like you really like are not afraid to be like 100% yourself. Like you show constantly your pictures of who you were and who you are. I remember this one picture when you got your first Fitbit,
Yeah,
and was it from your mom or it was from?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, my mom gave me a Fitbit for Christmas in 2013, and I remember opening it and being like, "Oh, this is a stupid gift. I don't want this thing." And this is back when Fitbits, they were pretty boring. They were just like a bunch of lights on a plastic band. They didn't even have a screen or anything like that. But I took it home and it was Christmas. And I'm like, let me see. So I put it on, and then I hit 10,000 steps that first day.
Oh wow,
And
that first day you hit 10,
yeah,
10.
I mean, I did some walking, right, and then so then I ended up hitting 10,000 steps every day for like the first 2 weeks from Christmas up until January 3rd, and then January 4th it was a snow day, so I didn't go to work that day,
Mm-hmm.
and I hung out at home and I actually watched Breaking Bad as I recall. And at the end of the day, the snow had stopped and it was kind of shoveled out. So we went and walked to the bar, and I walked to the bar and I got drunk and I walked home. And then the next day I woke up and I had like 8,200 steps, and I felt really disappointed in myself because I said, you know what? Here I am. I'm not living a healthy lifestyle. I'm not taking good care of myself. I've developed this healthy habit, and I've done a good job maintaining it. It makes me feel good. It's not that hard to do. And yesterday, right, I could have walked for another 12. Okay, it snowed, but I still managed to walk to the bar and back, which is
Right.
probably like 2 miles or whatever, right? I
That's
could have
that's
walked.
still a lot, right?
Yeah,
Especially if you're kind of tipsy.
yeah, I could have walked for an extra 20 minutes on the way there or whatever, right? Like this was no excuse that I. So I said, you know what? From this point forward, I'm going to hit 10,000 steps every day, and I did it every day for 7.5 years, all the way up until July of 2020. Every
That's
day,
impressive. That is honestly impressive to hit 10K steps
yeah, it
every
was
day or nearly
it.
every single day.
It was every day. I hit it every day for 7.5 years, and
That's okay. That's really impressive.
yeah, and I wouldn't like this became a foundational habit for me, and just most of the days it wasn't that hard because it just kind of became my lifestyle. But sometimes you had to really kind of turn your life upside down to make sure you got these steps in and kept this streak alive. And then, as sort of a sign of growth, I came to the point where I realized that this streak doesn't serve me anymore, right? And now I'm serving this streak, and it's like I'm at a place now where I can leave it in the past, right? And I can be satisfied getting 10,000 or more steps most days, and take a much healthier approach to it. But going all in on it for that length of time, I mean, that was what really changed my life more than anything, and turned me from a loser into a winner.
That's right. Because you reclaimed your life. That's the key thing, is that you took initiative to reclaim your life, to take your life back.
Yeah.
In this case, for you and your journey was from being overweight, being a loser, not really going in with how to running a Ironman, getting excited for in November we could be running it again, and see if you can even make it. I mean, that's what's impressive. So as we kind of wrap up today, what's something that you would want to leave with the audience? Like, what is like a phrase, a statement, something that you want to like resonate with the group?
And I would just say, it really comes down to self belief and not being caught up in these self limiting sort of beliefs that I think we all hold to a certain extent, and I probably still hold, right? I think this is a very natural human thing, because until you've actually done something, you can't really ever be sure that you can do it. But for me, for most of my life up until age 37, I didn't think it was possible for me to run further than about 5 miles. Like, I just didn't think that I could ever do something like that. Even at the times of my life when I was in shape, it just seemed like, man, that's just impossible. And well, now I've done that literally hundreds of times, and now 5 miles is kind of a short run for me, and from one perspective, for a long time when I was fat and when I was out of shape, yes, it was correct to say that I couldn't run further than 5 miles, because I couldn't. But it was wrong to say that I couldn't ever run further than 5 miles.
Right.
And that was just an incorrect self-limiting belief. And in order to get to that point, I obviously would have had to do a lot of work and, put that work in. But if I was willing to put that work in, it was possible. And I know that because I've demonstrated it, and it's obviously true at this point. So I can only help but think that, there's other self-limiting beliefs in other areas of my life that are holding me back. And that's part of the, great thing about life, because if you could just kind of tick off all the boxes when you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, well, then what would the point be? So it's always great to expand your comfort zone and learn new things and challenge yourself in new ways. It doesn't have to be doing crazy long races or anything like that. The mind is also an area where we can challenge ourselves. So just keep challenging yourself and keep setting new goals when you're reaching old goals, because if you can just get 1% better every day, that compounds over the weeks, months, and years to be a really impressive change.
Different.
You can accomplish a lot, but you'll never wake up and look or feel that much different from the day before. It doesn't matter how far along on the journey you are. You're going to be pretty much the same place you were the day before, the day before that, because changes like this are gradual. But if you can do it with consistency over time, you can really do some amazing things. So, if you're struggling out there, the most important thing is to believe that you can do this and start working towards it, even if it's small ways. Like I always say, one of the things I did that turned my life around was flossing my teeth every night, and that's how you demonstrate self-love, by demonstrating self-love, by doing habits consistently that show yourself that you care for and love yourself, right? So it's there's more than just one way to sort of reach this goal, but you just gotta believe you can achieve it and keep working towards it. And if you work towards it relentlessly, then your success is inevitable. It's just a matter of time. And that time it takes, well, that's the whole point of this, right? Again,
Right.
another cliche. It's the journey, not the destination, but it's true, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if it's the time that it takes you from get to point A to point B, that's where all the value is. It's not in being at point B.
Yeah. And that's why, Matt, you are the definition of a man of action who went from inaction to action, who reclaimed his life. Mr. Ironman, thank you so much for coming on here. And don't forget to follow Matt on all the social media platforms. Check out his coaching program to see how he can make an impact in your life today. So that way you can learn how to go from a man of inaction to a man of action, a man of valor, and a high quality man. So just remember, we're all about getting better, doing the best we can. So I hope everyone has a blessed day. See ya.